A vehicle cabin temperature can go up by 47 degrees. We know that. You don't put a dog in a hot car and let them sit, on an asphalt surface. But seeing the numbers and the things in front of them, I think was enough for them to go, yeah, we got to do something about this. This is important. And it's also a way to provide equity. We're basing where the money should be spent for tree planting programs based on the highest need. The under-canopied communities should get money first. That's what we said in our policies. So you see how the science can help with those things and move that stuff along. Okay. So I had a break scheduled here. Should we just keep going? Mm-hmm. If you need to step out, you can. And I know this is taping, but we may try to get done a little bit early since it is Sunday and you all have been so good. So let's talk about community connectivity. So when we're talking about scale, oops, don't do that. Do that. Oh, I'm so behind. Sorry, it took me back to the beginning. Look at all you've learned today. My goodness. Look at, you did that too. We talked about that. There we go. Oh, you learned so much. So how should you connect communities? It's a very interesting thing in the political times that we're in. A lot of people are seeking connection. How can I connect with other people that share my views? And the physical landscape has a lot to do with that. How does a community, we've always, we were like, oh, we want that small town experience. We want to be able to like walk into the post office and the postmaster knows who we are, and you go. I know like half a dozen people in the valley, and I keep running into them. And I'm like, oh, this is great, because you use the same places, the co-op, the little market, So how do you make that connectivity happen? And you know what? Thriving communities and ecosystems have the same characteristics. Diversity is key. Connectivity is necessary. If you think about an ecosystem, if it's so fragmented, like one side is on one, half of it's on one side of the Capital Beltway, and the other's on the other side. And how do those two things connect? It's very hard. Just flying insects, that kind of thing. But how do you make those connections better? I really like this piece of art here. State of Empathy, Art, Resistance, Understanding. It was a graphic for a community meeting that was happening. So how do you bring people together? It was interesting, we're going to talk about the Highline today. One of the things that they found very successful was there weren't a lot of people coming to their public meetings, so they went to them. In 2008, the Obama campaign said, that's how we won. We didn't hold rallies and say, you all come to our rallies. They went to the communities where they were already having their meetings, where the community center is holding a potluck that was already scheduled. And you're supporting what the community is already doing. Instead of going in and going, hey, look at me, y'all come to me. It was that kind of public outreach that they said really made a difference. And that's shifting the whole equation. Us as planners, we do this all the time. Hey, we're having a public meeting, we did this cool flyer, come to our public meeting, and then 5 people show up. It's not efficient. And it's a holistic thinking, right? We're not thinking. One way we counteracted that with the Green Infrastructure Plan was we weren't getting input from people from a good slice of the community. So we said, what infrastructure is already in place? You're going to love this. You're going to love this. You're going to go, yay, CJ. What infrastructure is already in place that we can tap into? When you do communications work, right? Don't you go in and go, we're not going to create a whole new communications network. It's going to be like your nerves are in your body. You're going to have nodes, and you're going to go in and go, I'm going to connect with this group, and I'm going to connect with this group. And that group's already connected with that group, and it's all there. We went to the interfaith community. All of the places of worship in the county, didn't matter what religion, were part of this interfaith community. It was great. What a great infrastructure to tap into. And we did a paper survey, and we asked them to hand it out at their churches, and they did, and we got a pretty robust response. These are people that generally don't use computers, or don't, the adults in the family don't use computers, and we were having a real hard time reaching people. It was awesome. And we used a network that already existed to get our message out. And that's a way to pull community together. So what kinds of things with gray infrastructure? So if we're talking about gray infrastructure, that's everything from gray stormwater pipes to roadways to even transit is gray infrastructure because you need it. And there's impervious surface. So what actions increase or decrease connectivity for roadways, for gray kinds of infrastructure?
Like a pedestrian bridge that crosses the lanes.
That would increase connectivity, yep. What happens if we're a bunch of small towns where I live, and when you cross the town line, you can always tell. Because road maintenance is different or whatever. Yeah, if they're, decreasing connectivity is they're not planning, the two transportation agencies across a jurisdiction boundary aren't working together. When the Wilson Bridge was widened, if Alexandria didn't widen where that bridge was coming down to accept all of those, monster lanes, that's not good connectivity. Okay, so we'll move on to green. So we know how gray infrastructure gets planned. But how does green infrastructure get planned and implemented? And for this, I'm talking about the ecological, on the ground, how do we make these connections? I like to use my own property as an example. So that star, again, is our property, or was our property. There's the little watershed you delineated right up in there. And so how do we make connections work? What kinds of things would decrease connectivity in an ecological system? It's pretty simple. Removing forest. Damming streams. Building roadways. Putting in subdivisions. Building stadiums. That reduces connectivity. And one of the key things about having a plan, a map, that says this is where we want to connect. This is where we aspire to connect. It may not be connected today. We did a lot of work with, frankly, paper maps and clear acetate overlays. And we took that aerial, and all of us got in a room. I think I totaled that there was like 150 years of experience in the county in that room. And we talked about, should the connection be here? Oh no, there's that, self-storage thing that's in, everybody knows the county like the back of their hand, right? So we talked about things like that. We decided that this should be a connection here. Even though it goes over, this is a major north-south limited access interstate. We said, oh, well, there's more opportunities here, so let's make that be where the connection should be. It's just a plan, it's a guide. So we look at those things. I like to point this out that I could have made this a corridor for the stream that went by the front of my house, but I thought I'd be nice and not be greedy and say, oh, that should be protected because it's in front of my house. But this is just to the back of our property. That back is right on that edge. This is a beautiful stream valley through here that will probably be protected permanently if any development ever comes in. So, that's an advantage to even the homeowners because we have some settled expectations about what's going to happen in that area. it's all 2-acre zoning. So that means each individual lot has to be at least 2 acres. We couldn't subdivide because we had a little less than 4 acres, but you know, it felt like a lot more because of that. Here's the section that we're saying this is very important, this corridor down here. And you know, these light green areas, they're evaluation areas. We'll evaluate it when something comes in. We want to look at this area more closely, okay? And it's usually because it's still forested. We're trying to protect the best of what's left. So you have to map the best of what's left, look at where you want to make those connections, and you know, get that map out there. Other ways that we can make connections, gray and green. I love when there's wildlife cameras, because they found that almost as soon as this was finished, this is in Florida, I think, the large mammals started moving back and forth. Because they know. You see those bridges in Canada where they direct the large, you know, elk and, you know, the huge wildlife that's out there. And they put fences along the side, and it's a bridge that's green that they can cross over. So cool.
What kind of animal is that?
You know, I think it's a panther. Yeah, from Florida. Anyway, so how do we get to these, you know, somewhat utopian green communities? So Tim Bately is a professor at the University of Virginia, where I got my master's degree. He's great. He's a really great speaker and kind of a visionary. He's always kind of out in front. And he's been talking about this for a long time, but is there anybody in here who's really into new urbanism? You know, new urbanism? It's like, we need to go back and build the cities the way we used to, with the buildings up to the street, with, you know, like how DC is, with those row houses, with the neat little front yards, but still have a place to sit on the stoop, and that eyes on the street stuff that Jane Jacobs, a famous author, my planning students, you know Jane Jacobs? Okay, yes. Where she says you should have porches, you need eyes on the street. That's how you keep a street safe. Grandma's sitting out there going, you kids be, you know, back before the street lights come on. It's, you know, making that connection through the physicality of the space. So he says, well, take it one step further and don't just, you know, focus completely on the social aspects of the design. Also think about the green aspects of the design, which frankly are also beneficial to people, of course. And it's, you know, it recognizes that cities have such huge footprints, huge. It's just not, it's not something that you can overlook. When you can do something like this, where you have high rises, this is just an artist rendering, but you have high rises and you have open space. Remember I said I like both and thinking? You've got to have both. And you've got to make that open space inviting. And you've got to make it so that sunlight gets in there and that it's not in a canyon. One of the fun open spaces that I got to critique when I was in grad school is Reston Town Center. I know I keep talking about Reston. It's a cool place. You should go. It's an all-planned community. From the get-go, they laid out, you know, the whole area. It was really kind of cool. So, where was I going? Reston?
Open space.
Canyons.
You got sun that hits the ground.
Reston Town Center, thank you. I was like, where was I going? Doing pretty good, I've only done that once so far. So Reston Town Center, it's so cool. So they did these high-rise buildings, but the plaza faces south and west. It's open on the south and west sides. Well, duh. Of course, that's where the sun's gonna come in, that's where it's gonna have the most light. I think the only really blocked side is the east side, and there's a fountain there, and it's, you know, all this beautiful stuff. And you won't believe how this plaza is installed. It's all on horizontal beams, so it is suspended above the soil so the trees get to have the soil to themselves. Not completely to themselves, because they run some conduits and other stuff through the soil through there. But the hardscape is suspended over the soil. I know, very cool. I was an inspector when they installed it, and most of the street tree islands are the same way. So the impervious surface isn't compacting the soil, and the tree's not trying to grow. I call it growing in a pot, you know, because we plant them in the street trees and we give them, you know, like 100 square feet of soil, and that's just not enough. And then we go into DC and we go, oh, hey, look at these trees. They're not growing in very much soil. Well, they also didn't have the impacts that modern trees have, you know, dogs and compaction and all that. Okay, so definitely needing to think about how do we make public places where people want to be. They do an ice skating rink there. They do, you know, it's really, really popular. And for something that's basically a strip center, you know, they have good, so the economics of it work, in my opinion, because they thought about the green aspects of it and the social aspects of it. That's why the economics works. Let's see, land consumption outpaces growth, local governments are the right body to act, so that's what he's saying green urbanism should do. Cities should live within their ecological limits. I think I spit my drink when I read this statistic. 125 times greater is the land mass that the City of London would need to support itself. 125 times what they have now, based on resources and trash generation and, you know, to be able to, they're not living within their ecological limits. It's like the total maximum daily loads, right? We're not living within our limits of how much we're polluting. So we're finally talking about these things as limits, and how can we start to address them? It said, you know, this green urbanism says you need connections, you should do biomimicry, seeing the pattern here, you're starting to see the same things come in. Practice circular metabolism, inputs and waste. Wow, if there was a shopping center that could do inputs and waste, no dumpsters, zero runoff, composting on site with the, the zero food recycling, do it on site. Wow, grow it all on site. That Bowie shopping center will do agriculture roofs on the whole, the Macy's, the Sears, the Best Buy. We'll do farm roofs. Or we'll take the Best Buy, since they seem to be going out of business. We'll take those giant gymnasium buildings and we'll do vertical aquaculture. Whoa. We could feed a whole city with that. A lot of, what are they called? We were talking about shipping containers the other day. One of the really cool pop-up things that I'm seeing are shipping containers that are doing vertical hydroponic gardening. So it's all these little trays with lights, you know, hung vertically with water circulating, no soil, growing lettuce and all kinds of stuff. It's awesome. So couldn't we feed a whole city if we did that? Just a thought. And then we're not shipping, my big thing is shipping grapes from Brazil. I'm like, really? If I had to pay the full freight for those grapes that came all the way from Brazil, I wouldn't be able to do it. Because part of the freight is that they don't have environmental laws down there, so their, you know, fields are less protected, and yeah, so many costs associated. Oh goodness, they've got to support healthy lifestyles, walking and biking, we know that, and they've got to have a spiritual connection. So I think that is a lot to pack into one development. But there's lots of ways that you can look at it. Eco districts is a new thing. Has anybody heard that term? It's very, very new. And people are using it in different ways. Kind of like green infrastructure, you know, when a term is new, people glob on to one definition or another. And eco-districts, one definition is, in Prince George's County, they're trying to get a green jobs and green industry eco-district going. So they want to build, you know, super efficient windows and solar panels and things for green roofs, and, you know, they've got the warehouse space, they've got the roads, you know, we just need to get a business in there. So they're trying to get one established. And I wanted to go on this website here for just a minute, because it's kind of cool. Do I have more than one? Oh, it's not on there. Okay. So this is kind of cool. I would encourage you to just kind of poke around on this website if you're interested. Under this website, it's a certification program. So they do certification for a fee, and you know, it's a way to get credibility to businesses who want to invest or businesses who want to come there. Wow, that looks like, is that Faneuil Hall in Boston? If not, it's a very similar kind of thing. Don't you love these? Boy, that's a little hard to see. I love seeing old buildings changed into something new. The Chelsea market like this is on the High Line. It's an old building, had been a market forever, and they divided it up into little shops, and it's so cool. And there's almost no natural light in there, but it's still really cool to hang out in there, and they've got all these old block and tackle hanging from the ceiling, and a little fountain thing, and you know, it's an experience. And it brings people into communities who might not otherwise come to that community. And that's, talk about a draw economically to kickstart, if you will, a new community to come back. So it's just a rating system. What I wanted you to just be familiar with these terms, because you know, you graduate from this program and somebody says, hey, have you ever heard of eco-districts? I don't want you to say, no, I've never heard of them. So just getting that good exposure. They have this protocol that they use. It's basically their rating system and how you go about getting points for your district. So just something to be aware of. I think it's interesting that there are different rating systems that are coming on other than LEED to, you know, offer for people who, you know, just, we need an economic boost and we're not getting it, and so we really need to get on it, as they say. Okay, let's do this. We are wrapping up for today. So why don't we take a break at this point.